The following program contains explicit candor. If you suffer from self-deception, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your political advisor.
Proclaiming the truth in the highways and byways of the world. Fighting for justice in the dark alleys of politics. Raising the voice of resistance to a fevered pitch. And he knows where to find the best and worst jail food in America. Randall Terry.
Just got back from Scotland. I'm trying to look for a country where me and my family and my staff can flee once Obama completely destroys our freedoms. Want to join me? Braveheart, where are you when we need you? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Voice of Resistance. The demise of freedom and the growth of tyranny are now quickening their pace. We're going to talk about Biden, Obama, a threat for Obama's impeachment, the states that have petitioned the White House to secede from the Union, and I'm going to read the entire bill from Wyoming, where lawmakers are poised to tell the federal government, we won't allow you to enforce your laws here in this state. That and so much more on today's program. Hope you can stay with me for the full show. Let's hear a quick word of wisdom from Granny Jihan.
Today, children, the lesson is cleverness. Remember the apostle of God, Muhammad, and how he was always clever against those Jewish dogs. And so today, we have President Morsi in Egypt. On the surface, he says, war against Israel is bad, okay? But underneath, he promotes Hamas. You see his cleverness? Oh, he just like Apostle Muhammad. Allah Akbar!
Welcome back to the program, friend. This is the Voice of Resistance. I trust that because you watch this program, you are among the few Americans who have not been seduced by bread and circuses, who have not been lulled to sleep by the siren song, but that you are grieved, that you fear, that you are asking God and your friends, what do we do? I want to take a minute to explain to you what's at stake and to encourage you to say, God, here am I, send me. Later on in the program, I'm going to read the text of the Wyoming law that may be the example of what saves us. And I'm going to read to you the petitions from citizens of several states who petitioned the White House to secede from the Union. And Steve Stockman, congressman from Texas, is already discussing the possibility of impeachment if Obama goes through with these executive orders. By way of quick background, Joe Biden turned in his suggestions to the president a day early. The White House has now leaked that they have 19 executive orders that they intend to issue by the end of this week, infringing upon our Second Amendment rights. This is, without exaggeration, the placing of the hands around the neck of American liberty with the intent to strangle it. We'll cover it as we go forward. But there's a lot of people who might be watching wondering, why are you so preoccupied with all this? Well, first of all, there's several reasons. Let me give you one quick background. Have you ever heard of the world superpower Portugal? How about Spain? Holland? England? Do you understand that there have been great world powers that have come and gone? Spain is right on the edge of being a third world country in many aspects. They used to be the dominant force in the world. Because most of us don't study history, we fail to see that the greatness that is America as an economic superpower and as a military superpower is pretty new. Think about this. Prior to World War II, our foreign policy was one of isolationism. People came to America, they fled to America because of freedom and because of the chance for economic growth for their family, land ownership, start a business, low taxes. People risked their lives crossing the Atlantic, risked their lives crossing mountain ranges as they moved west, not for free stuff, but for freedom. Those freedoms are being strangled. We're losing them on the installment plan. And I have come to the conclusion, and you need to hear me, and I'm going to take a break and we'll read the law, but you need to hear me on this. We've passed the point of no return. There is going to be a major collapse in this country. There's several variables. Number one, will it be quick or will it be slow? Number two, will it involve convulsions and violence? Number three, will we turn it around and retain the 50 states? Number four, will there be states that secede from the Union, such as Texas, that has the legal right to do so? Number five, if states do attempt to secede, will the federal government use violence to try and stop them, as happened in the Civil War? But you've got to understand things from God's perspective. There is a God in heaven. He made eternal laws, and when those laws are violated, there's hell to pay, literally. The fact that we have the blood of innocent human beings crying from the ground for vengeance is one area where we have sealed our fate for some type of horrific judgment. The abominable sins of the militant homosexuals, those are also listed as reasons that the land will vomit someone out in the scriptures. The land will vomit out the people. We have the economic reality, a debt that we can never repay. All right, so there's going to be an economic collapse. As sure as you and I are here, there's going to be one. And now you have the move towards making us a subjugated people to our government. So when you add all of these things, you have the perfect storm coming for social convulsion, the demise, the breaking up of a great empire, and perhaps horrific violence. So the question is, when we hit bottom, wherever that is, who will emerge as the new leaders? Because somebody has to rebuild. Somebody will be standing on the rubble. Will it be Winston Churchill or Adolf Hitler? Remember, Hitler came to power because Germany was in chaos. So part of why I'm doing this show is so that you prepare yourself to be a part of the team of either leaders or servants who restore the republic or restore the remains of the public to a true Declaration of Independence, theocentric, God-centered foundation. Because if we don't, then we're going to go from the convulsions that are coming to true tyranny like we've seen in many nations of the world. And yes, I am comparing where we're headed with the Nazis, fearlessly, because I know history. And if you don't agree with me or you just have a knee-jerk reaction against it, it's because you don't know your history. It's not my problem and my fault that you're a victim of a poor education. But I'm here to offer you a cure. That's why we have this show, and that's why we have the books, tapes, videos that we offer. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, the bill in Wyoming, more, and more. I'll talk to you.
Sometimes even Randall is wrong. For example, he said, if you put the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor, it's going to become a magnet for immigrants from around the world.
Friend, you need to get this book. We won't get fooled again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Friend, you need to get this book, We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
Obviously, you're here because you know how to rock and roll. It's Randall Terry. Ow!
Welcome back to the Voice of Resistance, friend. Representative Steve Stockman said in a press release, and I quote, "I will seek to thwart this action by any means necessary, including, but not limited to, eliminating funding for implementation, defunding the White House, and even filing articles of impeachment." Friend, Steve Stockman has been involved with the Christian right for many years. He served one term in Congress in the 90s, if my memory is correct, and has been elected again. He is one of the most clear-thinking men in the House of Representatives. And there it is. It's like the 95 treatise on the door. God only knows what's going to happen. But thank God we've got people like him. Thank God we have people like the folks in Wyoming. I'm going to read to you the law, word for word. I'm going to read to you the law that is gaining momentum right now in Wyoming regarding this tyranny from this monster, Obama, in the White House. I'm sorry, did I call our president a monster? He's like the Cookie Monster, just roughly grumpy. House Bill number HB 0104, Firearms Protection Act, and they're the sponsors, and they're growing. A bill for an act relating to firearms, providing that any federal law which attempts to ban a semi-automatic firearm or to limit the size of a magazine or of a firearm or other limitation on firearms in this state shall be unenforceable in Wyoming. This is them telling the federal government, go to the hot place. If you think you're going to say we can't have a 30-round clip or that certain guns cannot be owned, sold, and enjoyed in our state. All right, skipping down. Offenses and penalties. Defense of Wyoming citizens. No public servant, as defined in the Wyoming statute, and it gives a number, or dealer selling any firearm in this state shall enforce or attempt to enforce any act, law, statute, rule, or regulation of the United States government relating to a personal firearm, firearm accessory, or ammunition that is owned or manufactured commercially or privately in Wyoming and that remains exclusively within the borders of Wyoming. All right? They're saying if you're a BATF agent, okay, if you're an FBI agent, if you work for the federal government or state government for that matter, you cannot enforce any law or executive order of the United States of America if it infringes even this much on our guns here. It gets better. Any official, agent, or employee of the United States government who enforces or attempts to enforce any act, order, law, statute, rule, or regulation of the United States government upon a personal firearm, a firearm, accessory, or ammunition that is owned or manufactured commercially or privately in Wyoming and that remains exclusively within the borders of Wyoming shall be guilty of a felony, and upon conviction shall be subject to imprisonment for not less than 1 year and 1 day or more than 5 years, a fine of not more than $5,000 or both. They're saying, Obama, if you send any federal agents here of any kind and they try and enforce your rule, your executive order, we will arrest them. We will try them for a felony crime. They will go to a Wyoming prison for not less than 1 year and a day, not more than 5 years. If you were an ATF agent, would you like to go to Wyoming to try and enforce his damnable order? Let's read more. The Attorney General may defend a citizen of Wyoming who is prosecuted by the United States government for violation of a federal law related to the manufacture, sale, transfer, or possession of a firearm accessory, or ammunition owned or manufactured and retained exclusively within the borders of Wyoming. This is their way of saying, you've got a free lawyer. You go ahead, citizens of Wyoming, keep the fight, and we will protect you. The Attorney General of the state of Wyoming can be your attorney. Any federal law, rule, regulation, or order, that's executive order, created or effective on or after January 1st, 2013, shall be unenforceable within the borders of Wyoming if the law, rule, regulation, or other attempts to ban or restrict ownership of semi-automatic firearm or any magazine of a firearm, or require any firearm, magazine, or other firearm accessory to be registered in any manner. This is gutsy, but it needs to go a step further. And we're trying to reach some of these guys to ask them to add to the bill. Namely, they need to say, we refuse national background checks. That's the issue. One of Obama's executive orders, they're already leaking it, is going to be that we want everyone who purchases a gun to have a background check. Everyone. Friend, you're smart enough to figure this out. I'm smart enough to figure this out. That's their back door to gun registration. The purpose of gun registration is to know who has guns. So if they have to confiscate them, they know which doors to knock on, or they know which doors to knock down. I beg the lawmakers of Wyoming, we're on in Wyoming. Some of you in Wyoming are watching me right now. Contact your lawmakers and ask them to also put in this wonderful bill that we refuse to participate in a national background check because it is the back door to gun registration, which is the front door to gun confiscation, which is the stuff that slaves are made of. We'll take a quick break, talk a little bit about succession, that and much more. Don't go away.
Submit to Muhammad.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. The flame of Christian ethics is still our best guide. Only on this basis can we reconcile the rights of the individual with the demands of society. Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back to the Voice of Resistance, friend. For point of clarity, when I speak about national background check, to use Biden's word, I mean universal background check if you buy a firearm. So what that means is your brother sells you a firearm, you sell one to your dad, and somehow they're going to require, with Obama's executive order, that either you do a background check or you trot down to the nearest gun store and get in line with all the other happy little slaves and have the gun store owner do a background check. Friends, we have to understand that this is evil. This is the stuff slaves are made of. We need to tell them collectively, go to hell. We are not going to do this. I'm going to read to you some of these petitions from different citizens that have been given to the White House to secede from the Union. But I'm going to say something scary. All right? I'm not trying to make it scary. Some people are going to go, I can't believe you said that. You just have to hear me. A lot of people have thought over the years, would I be willing to die for something? Would I be willing to die for freedom? Well, remember the movie Patton with George C. Scott, where he said, we're not asking you to die for your country. We're asking you to make the other poor dumb blank die for his country. I said years ago in a pro-life meeting, the question is not merely, are we willing to die for freedom? The question is, are we willing to kill for freedom? And as I said, that's going to be troubling to some people, but you have to understand the reason we have in America is because the farmers, the guys who owned the squirrel hunting rifles, they killed British soldiers. Real men fired real bullets into their fellow human beings. British bodies were buried. Widows were left behind in England. Orphans were left behind because there were men who were not only willing to die for freedom, but they were prepared to take the life of another human being for freedom. I just want to say to our friends in the federal government, some of you need to be looking at early retirement because you know, as well as I do, that there are people who are not going to go along with this. By the way, when I say the BATF, that stands for Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. The ATF is who oversees the licensing of gun dealers. And I can promise you this. There are ATF agents right now who are sitting around the table with their wives saying, I think I'm going to resign. I've been in some of these meetings. I've been in some of these gun shows. And if they are forced, if these people are pushed too far, they will kill us. They're not stupid people. These are good men. These are men who swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. And many of them are discussing resigning right now because they see what's coming as unconstitutional. We're nowhere near the end of this. I've got to take a break. I ran out of time. I'll tell you about these secession petitions when we come back. Don't go. O Lord, thou God of vengeance, shine forth. Rise up, O Judge of the earth. Render to the proud their deserts. O Lord, how long shall the wicked exult? Friend, you need to get this book. We won't get fooled again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Welcome back to the Voice of Resistance. For point of clarity, British citizens picked up guns against their own government. We forget that, folks. When I spoke about taking the life of another human being, it wasn't just in self-defense. They were revolutionaries. They were picking up weapons and firing them against their own government and the representatives of their government. Now, an option that would be a lot less bloody is secession. States peacefully leaving the Union. Right now, I've only got about a minute left. Louisiana, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Citizens of those states put the petition you see on the screen, peacefully grant the state to withdraw. And then they quote from the Declaration of Independence. Gotta love that. In fact, I quoted from that a little bit earlier in the week. Texas had its own that said, look, we've got the 15th largest economy in the world. We have a balanced budget. And for economic purposes, we think we want to leave. And then, to add insult, they had a petition that says, deport everyone that signed a petition to withdraw their state from the Union. You got to love it. If you sign one of those petitions, be careful. The Obama people know where your email address ends up. Just kidding.